last segment, guys, and we're going to try something a little bit different today. You know, the fire hose of truth, the fire hose of news, the fire hose of information is just gushing. And, you know, I get it. I may, you know, make some of these topics go on longer than they ought to because I'm interjecting my own philosophy and my own viewpoint on them. But I want people to recognize them for what they are. But the truth is that there's so much of it out there, I can't possibly share it all with you. Even if I, you know, were to try to give this a shorter shrift, which is what you see in the mainstream media, right? I mean, you know, they'll pull something up like this article that I just talked about with, you know, Dirty Harry before, or the House hearing, and they give it, you know, 10 seconds, 30 seconds, even a minute or two. I think this stuff deserves more than a minute or two. I mean, are we not talking about the same country you and I live in? I mean, is this some other reality or not? So what I've tried to do here, or what I'm going to try to do in this segment, and we'll do it as often as it's necessary, but what I'd like to do is to just talk about some of the other issues that are out here, because there are just tons of news stories that you need to know about. Yesterday, the Supreme Court ruled that police authority in home searches without a warrant is now allowed, as long as one person in the residence consents. And it doesn't even have to be someone who has authority to consent. They don't have to even live there. So let's use this example. This is a complete and utter abuse of the Fourth Amendment. The police go to the home. They knock on the door. You tell them, get lost. Come back with a warrant. You leave the house. They're monitoring and observing from a car across the street or a camera. They go back over to the house and they knock on the door, and your 19-year-old son answers the door, and they say, we're here and we want to search the property. And he doesn't know the law. He says, well, sure, come on in. Boom. They're allowed. The solution, I think, put up a permanent letter, frame it, put it under glass so the weather won't destroy it or something like that, and put up a permanent note on your door. There is no entry to this premise without a warrant. And then have every member of your family sign it. That should resolve the problem. I saw a guy the other day who put up a floor mat, a doormat, I mean. It was one of those straw ones, you know, and he had it, it just said one thing: come back with a warrant. I'm like, there you go. Now, of course, would that hold up in court? I don't know, but I think the letter thing probably would. And it doesn't have to be so obtrusive that, you know, your neighbors can read it from across the street, but it should be clear enough that if somebody's up there standing at the door, they can't avoid seeing it. Maybe attach it straight to the door. I don't know. But you gotta, I mean, look, folks, your rights are being stripped from you so fast at this point that, you know, I mean, it's unimaginable that we can continue at this pace and have a republic in any reasonable window of the future. The EPA, news story, officials obstructed a fraud investigation. EPA officials obstructed a fraud investigation. They made physical threats against investigators, against the inspector. And by the way, none of this was prosecuted, even though evidence was given to a board to review and remove that employee. He was never prosecuted. Two individuals, at least two, have refused to provide interviews, and they've hidden evidence against the guy who embezzled $900,000 pretending to be a CIA agent. Now, I mean, you can't get more bizarre than this, folks. This is like the plot of some kind of a crazy knuckleheaded sitcom or some ABC news or a television drama. This guy was pretending to be a CIA agent. He said he was, and he was submitting expense reports for his travel expenses all over the world. I mean, Hong Kong, Taiwan for a couple of weeks. He was going all over, Asia and Europe. And he was telling his boss, well, I'm a CIA agent. And I work for them simultaneously as the EPA. Well, first of all, why was the EPA paying off on CIA expenses? Nobody can answer that question. Secondly, $900,000? He wasn't showing up for work, but he was still getting paid by the EPA. And it turns out later on, under his own admission, when he was brought to court, and he's now been convicted, but he was sitting there languishing, hanging out in hotels at, these extravagant $800,000 a night hotels and bringing prostitutes in or whatever the heck he was doing. These people were covering for him. Why? You got to be kidding me. I mean, if your coworker had embezzled $900,000 from the company while fooling you into thinking he was a top secret, secret squirrel CIA agent, I don't know about you, but I'd be insulted and angry that I was played for a fool by somebody who purported to be my friend and coworker, and I'd be the last guy that would be trying to sweep his dirt under the rug. But not in this EPA. Oh, this is the same EPA, by the way, that was just caught not revealing the fact that they had secret email addresses that they were using outside of government monitoring, so that they could utilize these for emails that they didn't want anybody else to see, because all government email has to be stored and retained, right? I mean, guys, and this is the same EPA now that wants control of all of our water supply and has just, come out with brand new rules to make your wood stove obsolete. I mean, you got to be kidding me, folks. You're kidding. This stuff is so over the top. Okay, let's talk about Connecticut. Now, look, they've passed a law that on January 1st you were supposed to turn in, you were supposed to submit an application to have your assault weapon registered. And magazines. How they're going to qualify that, I don't know, because magazines don't have serial numbers. I mean, a gun does, but the magazines don't. And any magazine that was, over 10 rounds had to be registered. Well, I mean, there's no serial number, so you could say, well, I own 5 and actually own 12. I mean, the whole thing is just ridiculous. So everybody was required to have these applications in by the 1st. Apparently, they got some 50,000 applications from idiots in Connecticut who actually felt that they were going to follow the law. And anyone whose application was received after January 1st is now considered in violation of the law. And they've been giving letters out stating that they have a couple of options, which is to permanently disable the weapon, sell it to a gun dealer, get it out of the state, or turn it into them. I can't imagine what they're going to do with them. And they're now threatening to go and confiscate these weapons, I'm assuming door to door, because I don't know how else you're going to do it. And I got to tell you, folks, if they tried to go door to door and confiscate weapons in the state of Connecticut, and by the way, they only got like 50,000 or so applications, and there are an estimated 300,000 of these assault weapons, quote unquote, in the state. So what that really tells me is this. About 250,000 American patriots said, get stuffed. What that also tells me is that if they try to go and collect from the 250,000 Americans, one of them, at least one of them, is going to say, get off of my property, mush mouse, forced I blow your head off. Remember that cartoon when you were a kid? Mush Mouse and Pumpkin Puss. Pumpkin Puss had a shotgun that had a bent up barrel, so the barrel would come down, and he was always shooting at Mush Mouse. Well, somebody's going to get shot, and some blood is going to spill, whether that is from the law enforcement who is tyrannically stealing and confiscating weapons from Americans who have every right to own them, or whether that's from an American who determines that he needs to defend his home and his family and fires upon them. But I got to tell you, folks, this may well be the proverbial spark in the powder room. This may well be the incitement of the second shot heard round the world. And I've got to tell you, if this government, whether that you want to classify it as federal or state, attempts to confiscate weapons from Americans and any blood is shed on either law enforcement's or civilian side, these politicians will be responsible for the beginning of the second Civil War in America. Okay, I posted a link up on our website about the complete list of Barack Obama's scandals, misdeeds, crimes, and blunders. And this is only accurate as of September of 2013, so the list is quite a lot longer, actually. But you'll be interested to read it, so I would strongly encourage you to, because it's literally pages long. And it will remind you and refresh your memory about some of the things which you may or may not have forgotten about, but, you know, I think it's worthy. Okay, new news. The police officers who stood like an execution firing line squad and killed a homeless guy will not be charged under with federal charges. Now, there's a video. It's up on America's Voice Now. It's up on Facebook. It's up on patriotfb.com. And I want you to go look at it. This is a guy who was homeless. The video is about 2 or 3 minutes long. It shows this guy standing there, and he's holding some kind of a knife. And they repeatedly keep telling him to drop the knife. He's separated from these police by somewhere it looks to be about 50 feet, or, you know, give or take. I mean, it's being shot from across the road, so I don't know the exact footage. But what I can say, and he's yelling, of course, and there's, you know, anyway, at one point he starts to walk sideways away from these officers, or parallel to their line, and they're standing in a line, and they open fire. 46 shots in 5 seconds by 6 officers. Only 11 of them hit, but they killed the guy. No penalty, no prosecution, nothing. Federal or state. Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard me say repeatedly that we live in a police state, and I will not back off from that statement. It is the truth. It was then. It is now. We live in a state of abject government-sponsored terrorism of you. Make no mistake about it, ladies and gentlemen. Where we are is at the collapse of liberty, freedom, and, quite honestly, our republic. We are virtually at the point now where our police are militarized, they're receiving training, they are receiving men and material, they are staging that information around the nation, and it's all being built up for a reason, and there's nothing that justifies it. Nothing. The American people are not these dangerous criminals that we're purported to be. Frankly, if all of these gun people were so dangerous, there wouldn't be any anti-gunners left, would there? I mean, it's just incomprehensible to me that we continue to keep allowing this over and over and over and over and over again. So, to continue on with some of the stuff that's going on here that I can't necessarily talk about every day because there's just so much of it. There was an article, by the way, out there on a letter that a guy wrote to the Connecticut law enforcement, and I would encourage you to get out there and read it. It's an open letter to law enforcement, and it's actually too long for me to read here, but it was very, very, very well written and very clear. In other news, a Russian warship has docked in Havana Harbor. Hello. The Cold War is on again, and apparently we're decimating our own military in favor of allowing our enemies to continue to build and grow theirs. And I'm not just talking about Russia. I'm also talking about China. Yesterday, the Arizona governor vetoed the religious freedom bill, even though she had multiple constitutional attorneys tell her that what she was hearing as ad hoc testimony that was that denigrated the bill and its purposes was wrong. These constitutional, she had letters written to her by a group of constitutional attorneys and professors who said that what they're telling you about the bill and the reason they're throwing it under the bus is not true. And she vetoed it anyway. You know, it's interesting. The NFL threatened her with not having the Super Bowl in Arizona if she signed the bill. And frankly, ladies and gentlemen, as far as I'm concerned, that's a reason for you to now write to the NFL and tell them that you will boycott any and all games. You won't watch any. You will not buy season tickets. You won't wear football jerseys. You're done, and they're finished. We don't do politics in the United States based on pressure from the NFL about whether or not you're going to get the Super Bowl in your state. I don't care whether the bill was good or bad for Arizona. The fact that the NFL would come out and apply a coercive tactic like that involves billions of dollars is enough reason for me to never, ever watch another football game again. And you need to let them know why you're boycotting them. It should be a national outrage that these bunch of pussies running around screaming bloody murder that they're not getting paid enough when they're making $4, $8, $9, $12 million a year have the unmitigated nerve to stand out there. And by the way, the NFL is a not-for-profit agency organization being supported by the theft of taxes that would relieve you, the American taxpayer. They're making billions. I'm telling you, I hate professional sports, and I'll tell you why. Because not only are they coercive and two-faced and scamming, conniving, thieving cutthroats, they jack your prices up to these unconscionable levels that you can't even take your kid to a football game anymore. And when you do, it's $5, $7 for what? A lousy, crappy hot dog? You could buy the entire pack for $1 at your local food store. And then they have the nerve to sit here and threaten a state with the loss of billions of dollars in revenue if they vote against something that isn't even what it's been labeled as. What makes the senior people at the NFL constitutional authorities? By the way, professional sports, for the record, is nothing more than a misdirection and an outlet for testosterone that would have every young American male in the country facing down on Washington with pitchforks, ropes, torches, and shotguns, chasing the scum out of there and cleaning our government out. That's my personal opinion on professional sports. It's meant to do nothing more. It's the bread and circuses of Rome. Okay. Man, that just galls me. Ronan Farrow. I don't normally do this kind of stuff, but this just shows you how ridiculous the media is. He started a show 3 days ago on MSNBC, a brand new show. And he's never been on camera before. And after 3 days on the air, they gave him the Cronkite Award for Excellence in Journalism. I mean, that sounds like Barack Obama winning the Nobel Peace Prize before he'd actually ever accomplished anything. I got to tell you, people, the number and the amount of the stuff that's going on out here is just, there is so much of it. And, you know, the case of law enforcement and abuses on that. I mean, here's an article. Officer shoots a 70-year-old man who's reaching for his cane. Guys, what part of this? don't we get that law enforcement and the police state are completely out of control? How many incidents are we going to allow to go on like this? Here's another one, by the way, and you should type this one in. Ann Coulter wrote an article called "Raise the Minimum Wage to $14 an Hour," using this one weird trick, and that's a play on words based on that stupid ad that you keep seeing, how you can save in insurance with using this one weird trick. It's a click-through ad that's making, I guess, millions for somebody. That is an excellent article, and I strongly encourage you to find it and read it, because it does matter. She has some very, very good points in there about how the real purpose, what's really happening here, is that the endless thirst by corporations to have ever lower wage earners and reducing the quality of work while simultaneously destroying the labor market in the United States for native-born Americans is what's really motivating immigration. Very, very well-written article. I encourage you. I mean, I'm not saying I agree with it 100%, because Ann Coulter sometimes can go a little over the top. But I am going to tell you, and she's a staunch Republican, which I have a problem with, because I don't think the Republicans are actually representing us. I think they're representing their party. Yesterday, a court ordered the removal of the anti-Islamic film that from YouTube. Now, Google has been pushing back and refusing to remove this film, which was the excuse used in the Benghazi attacks. And they're not forcing Google to remove it for the reason you might think. They're forcing Google to remove it because the woman who was in it says that as a result of its being shown everywhere, she's getting death threats and stuff like that, and that under a copyright limitation, she's begging for this thing to be pulled. So the other thing I wanted to bring out as cattle prices, ladies and gentlemen, are at an all-time low, and 63-year low. And I got to tell you, that's also why we are having food and food inflation in this country. The prices that are at an all-time low, but the price of beef is going through the roof. Have you noticed? Well, guess what? The cattle herds are also at an all-time low. And that ought to be telling you something, because we are getting set up in this nation for a staggering food emergency. And I'm going to tell you, if you are not taking advantage of the co-op, the food co-op that we have with Battery Station, you're going to be sorry. If you are not preparing, and if you're not local and you listen to our program and you're from somewhere else in the country, I get it. You can't participate with us in that way, but there are plenty of other ways that you can do locally in your own community. And I'm going to tell you, we are looking at a food emergency in the United States of America that is going to be terrifying and completely outside the scope of anything that anyone in the United States has ever known or experienced before, including the Great Depression. So please do yourself a favor and begin to prepare for your family and yourself if you haven't already, at least in the way of food. The new currency, folks, under an economic fiscal collapse is going to be food, medicine, and ammunition. I strongly encourage you to buy all three in massive quantities. Okay, we're going to wrap this show for the day. I'd like to hear from you. If you'd like to communicate with me, you can do so by sending me an email to mike@americasvoicenow.org. That's mike@americasvoicenow.org. You can find us on the web by going to americasvoicenow.org. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/americasvoicenow. You can find our YouTube channel where we post every show that we do up on YouTube. They're also available on our website. But on YouTube, you can find us at youtube.com/AmericasVoiceNow. I would encourage you, if you find any of these programs to be useful to you in any way, shape, or form, please share them with your circle of influence. Who is that? Anyone that you communicate with, anyone you know that you think might be interested in hearing from you. Just send them a link and say, hey, here's a show you ought to watch. Here's a segment that makes sense. You can also find us on Patriot FB. And if you are not a member of Patriot FB yet, I strongly encourage you to become one. It is patriotfb.com. That's like Facebook. All right. Thanks for riding with us today. We're going to wrap. Email me at mike@americasvoicenow.org. And you all have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow morning, bright and early. Today is Thursday. Tomorrow will be TGIF. If you can support us in any way, we appreciate that as well. We'll see you tomorrow morning.